Welcome to the Only People Matter talk series. My name is Charlotte Townend and I'm the coach, owner and founder of Only People Matter. Founded in 2018 and inspired by my beautiful grandma, Pamela Frances Townend, who instilled in me the importance of love and kindness towards all people. Her words spoke to me throughout my life and created my soundtrack. You can have all the money in the world, but in the end, only people matter. We are on a mission to spread her message and help people achieve their goals and also create a more emotionally connected and accepted society. I help people to build resilience throughout transitions, whether in work, life, or education. It's these times that define us, and our greatest, most complex transitions often lead to the best lessons. Personal development and making sure that you've got a healthy mind should be the number one priority in your life. Only People Matter are here to guide you and make sure that you're working, living, and studying to your full potential. Ordinary People, Extraordinary Stories is a YouTube series I created which dedicates a space towards the community so that they can tell their stories. We hear from celebrities, makeup artists, chefs, day in, day out. But what about the people that go unnoticed? What about their stories? This series is currently being recorded online, but I'm hoping that really soon I'll be in the studio with people for real. Please hit the subscribe button below so that you can keep up to date with all of our videos and our latest interviews. Today I am speaking with Laura, who since the age of 15 has suffered with endometriosis and has subsequently suffered other health issues which have shaped her life and her mental health forever. Thank you so much for taking some time out today, Laura. It's lovely to see you. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Just, plodding on, getting by in this strange world.
Still very strange at the moment. We're getting back to some normality, but still very strange. So can you tell us what endometriosis is?
Yes, it's an inflammatory disease linked to your menstrual cycle, menstrual health. It's something I hadn't ever heard of until a few years ago, and the name of it fits with this century-old theory that it's caused by retrograde menstruation. So you have your period and not all of the lining leaves and manages to find its way to other parts of your body and grow there. But it's not actually the lining of your womb. It's a tissue that's similar. And I mean, now with modern science, it's been found in embryos. So there's more support for the theory now that you are actually born with it. And then when you begin your menstrual cycle, that the different levels of hormones, it links up with your cycle. So they refer to them as lesions when they find them. So with me, and I know it's quite common for other people with this condition, so like 7 to 10 days before my period, that's usually when my pain is really severe. The way they diagnose it as well, so it doesn't just show up in scans, so they can only diagnose it if you have surgery for them to have a look, a laparoscopy. So you have to have an invasive procedure as well to actually confirm whether or not you've got it. So I mean, it's an evil thing.
Yeah, it sounds absolutely brutal and life-changing. So when you were 15, 16, obviously you started suffering with the symptoms way back then. What were the symptoms at that time? Like, what were the initial symptoms that came up?
Some of them did include these intense mood swings, and I did start to become quite depressed, and you know, there wasn't a real, not saying that there has to be a reason for depression, but the fact that it was happening soonish after I started my period, and I was regularly having stomach problems, and my immune system was becoming worse. So I would catch every single bug going, and I started having really, really bad migraines, so had to take medication for that, and the bloating was becoming a real problem.
And I suppose at that age as well, it's like, you know, some of that you probably just put down to being a bit of a teenager and a bit hormonal.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what we all thought, even me. I was just like, you know, I'm a typical teenager. This is what it is.
Yeah.
Like
yeah. And then obviously after that age, then, you know, growing up in 18, 19, that kind of age, what was it like then?
Yeah, that was when I was at uni, and my periods had become so heavy and uncomfortable, and it got to a point where my cycle was so irregular, and I was only having like a few days off from bleeding, and I was trying different forms of, when I went to the GP and was a bit like, look, I don't really think this is normal. I don't know. Because as well, you're brought up being told that periods are rubbish and they hurt, and they're not great. So I was like, well, maybe I'm just being dramatic. But she was just like, okay, we'll put you on the combined pill and try and get you into a regular cycle. And it did help a bit. But there was still just a constant problem there. And definitely, I look back now and I track my cycle, and I can definitely marry up my real dips in mood around my cycle. So, around then I was just like, okay, this isn't fun. I'm first year of uni now. Can I have a break, please?
Yeah. At that age, that's like the last thing that you need, especially when nobody really knows, obviously, at that point what it was. So what age did you actually get diagnosed with endometriosis?
31. Yeah. 31.
Right, so
2 years
a
ago.
long while after those initial, blimey.
Yeah.
And what was the treatment that they offered to give you for that when you were actually diagnosed?
When I was diagnosed, so while they were performing the surgery, they used a laser to burn at the lesions, and they just drained the cysts that they found, and he was just kind of like, So recommend that you get the Marina coil now, or I mean, he said really the best thing would be the combined pill, but they all contain lactose, and even that tiny amount I react to. So I was like, right, okay, so the coil is my only option here. And that was it. Discharged, and he just sort of said, look, when it gets really bad again, get referred back to us and we'll do another surgery. So yeah. And he was like, you know, some say that that being pregnant might ease the symptoms, or, you know, when you go through menopause, that could be the end of it. So you're a bit like, so there's no cure and there's no real treatment. Okay.
There's no treatment. That doesn't mean that you've got to go through a significant life event, basically.
Yeah. Oh. Exactly. Like after that first surgery, my symptoms were back and just as bad, if not worse, after like 6 months. So then began the referral process again to have another operation. And my research in the meantime had said, you know, the best way to help it is excision surgery. So for the surgeon to actually cut the lesions out rather than burn them, which really just creates more scar tissue and doesn't get it at the root. So that's what I had to push for. And I had that surgery last December. So, and it's definitely, things have definitely been better since that surgery. Like, it's definitely not gone, but it's just trying to hold off until I have to go through that again, because it's the actual surgery, the way they like blow up your abdomen, and you're only left with, so I've just got like a scarred belly button and a couple of other little scars, and that doesn't match up with the actual trauma that's gone on inside. So, and it's just being able to look at my stomach or body and not see that blown up version is really hard. So I mean, it's the first surgery, when they'd stretched my abdomen, like that felt really, really uncomfortable. And the second time I was a bit like, oh, maybe my tummy's been stretched like if I'd been pregnant overnight, because it stretched easier. So I'm like, great. Do I want to go through lots of these surgeries? Not really. Will I have to? Maybe.
Yeah. It's so awful. And the fact that there's still no cure as well, you know, like it's not a cure, it's just a temporary solution.
Yeah.
You're right in saying that.
Yeah. Like it's just, putting a plaster on it, really.
Yeah. And the cause of it still isn't fully known, right?
No.
Which I find like unbelievable, because it affects so many people and it's so severe. It begs the question, if men had to go through this, do you think it would be a more researched area, or?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I just do. It's the people leading society aren't massively affected by it, so you know, why would they be that interested? So it's up to people with endometriosis. We're pushing for it to be more on the agenda. Like, I know Endometriosis UK pushed like for there to be a parliamentary group formed on it and to discuss women's health issues. So that was finally starting up last year, I think, but obviously things are kind of a bit on hold at the moment. And for that, they reached out and asked people with endometriosis to write down their experiences and how it impacts your life. And so all of those got sent through, and it was, I mean, the amount of responses that they did get, it's just, there are so many of us out there.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's about making sure that people are aware of it, because it's, I mean, I know yourself and then a few other people as well in my life that I know have it, and it's, yeah, it's and they're always slightly different circumstances as well, so slightly different symptoms, or you know, like some are more severe and then there's other things that creep in because of it, so you know, it really does need to be highlighted.
Yeah, like it's weird as well that, so when they diagnose it, they will give you a stage 1 to 4, but then say to you those stages don't actually link up with how severe it is. So even you could be a stage 1 but be in so much pain and have so many symptoms. You could be a stage 3 and not really notice that you have it that much. And it's just a bit like, what? Well, why is that? Why? Yeah. Can we know more? Why does that happen?
And do they tell you the reason why the stages are determined in that way, or there's how they're actually, how do you classify 1, 2, 3, 4?
They look into just how many lesions they find and then involve. So the cysts that come with it, they're not just like ovarian cysts. They call them, it's kind of gross, chocolate cysts, just because of the consistency and everything. So they'll put all this information together. I mean, so I'm either a 2 or a 3, but I know that when they say it's a stage 4, that's when they can even find it, like it can fuse your organs together. And there are some people with endometriosis that have to go through like bowel resections, and because they find it there and it's just giving them so many problems. But it's it's finding a surgeon who will really look for it and be able to actually recognize the lesions, because they're different colors, sizes. It's, I mean, I've looked at pictures and just been like, well, I don't see it. But so it's part of it as well is luck of the draw. Well, because mine's through the NHS, like I wouldn't be able to afford the cost for surgery like they have to in countries like America. It's shocking, the stories from over there. So I'm lucky to be able to go through the NHS, but then I'm just reliant that I'm getting a surgeon that will be able to recognize the lesions and remove them.
Yeah, and it's not something that you want to be taking chances with, ideally. But you know, that is unfortunately, obviously, well, not unfortunately, because like you say, we're so lucky in this country that we have the NHS and they do amazing work. But also when you're in a situation where it's really, really dangerous surgery, you want to know the person and you want to know that they're qualified to do it, you know. Endo is linked to 50% of infertility cases, and also various other side effects. Can you tell me a bit more about this and how you've managed these side effects?
And the side effects, it's an inflammatory disease, and even the lesions themselves, they will release like another stress hormone. So if you're stressed, I mean, I know myself, like if I'm stressed, my whole body is just a mess. And I get really severe nausea. So I have some medication for that. That's quite often worse around ovulation, which I can actually, without looking at my tracker, I will know when I'm ovulating because it hurts. Like I just get this sharp pain, and I know if I'm nauseous, and so I take medication for that. And it's also linked to a lot of digestive issues. So it's often mistaken actually just for IBS. So like with me, I was seeing the doctor a lot for stomach issues, and they were just like, yeah, you've got severe IBS. Because endometriosis will affect you at any day of the month. It's not just like, oh, you're on your period, it's worse. It can be any day. And there are just those things that will really trigger it, and that can be with your diet, with stress, sleep, the usual. It's, if your body's angry, then the endo lesions, they become angry, and they'll release even more stress into your body. And you're just like, please. And I mean, everyone has to find different ways to try and cope with it. I know there's a lot of people that do follow, they just call it the endo diet. And that is avoiding a lot of the inflammatory foods, which I do that. I mean, I am actually allergic to dairy and that anyway, but it's definitely something that affects almost everyone with endometriosis. They will have digestive problems. And I think, yeah, I just accepted it at the time when they were like, yeah, it's severe IBS. It's nothing more. So there's definitely more education that needs to, yeah.
Yeah, and I suppose it just needs to be, rather than something that's so late on down the line is looked at, is like it's something that's kind of a first point of call when people are coming in with those symptoms. Hopefully now, compared to when you were 15, they would go to that sooner rather than later. But you don't know, do you? You just don't know.
No. And it's most people that I follow a lot of accounts on social media, and I know from my own experience, I got the diagnosis because I had to push for it. Like I had to really fight to work out what was going on with my body.
Yeah, and that's just, it's not right, is it? And that in itself as well would be triggering for it, because that's more stress then, you
Yeah.
know? So it's not actually you having to go and do all this research and dig in and not knowing, you know, that's almost, I always think like with illnesses, sometimes it's not okay, it's not great when you do find out what's wrong with you, but you'd rather know, because
Mhm.
it's that not knowing that can cause so much stress and
Yeah.
worry, you
It
know?
was like really bittersweet when they confirmed that I had it, because then I was a bit like, huh, I wasn't imagining it.
Yeah.
It, like, there really is something going on with my body.
Mm.
It, you know, all down the years just being told, it's just a bad period. You just, it's, you know, we just have to go through it. And like, no, actually, there really is something.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you say, bittersweet, isn't it? Because on one hand, obviously nobody wants that diagnosis, but then on the other hand, you've got that diagnosis and you can work with it, and at least you know what it is, and know what the triggers are for that. Um, Obviously, during this period of about 15 years, then really, this must have had a huge effect on your life and relationships. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, it's still difficult now. It's partly with the mood swings throughout the month. I mean, I can mostly recognize now when those are coming, or I'm fortunate that the support network that I have built around myself, you know, they all know that I have endometriosis, and so I feel I can say to them if I'm having a flare up and I don't feel very well. But it's my my friends and everyone, they have to be so patient. I think, especially, we can make plans and I might have to cancel last minute, and that can put a real strain on relationships. It's also being with someone, and almost now that I know for sure that I have it, I'm a bit like, well, if I start dating, I I should tell them, but there's this weird like embarrassment about it, and thinking, well, I don't really trust that they will support me or react well to that, especially because it can impact when you're being intimate with someone. You know, I first noticed that when, I mean, the joys of having to have smear tests as well. And I was like, is it meant to hurt that much? So it's like, that's a common problem with endometriosis as well, is
Right.
actually being uncomfortable and in pain sometimes when you actually want to be intimate with someone.
Yeah.
So trusting someone enough to have that kind of conversation is pretty tricky. And then, well, on top of the endometriosis, when I was, well, was I? Yeah, I was 19, at uni, and I had another lovely rare condition. Yeah, spontaneous acute compartment syndrome in my leg, which I had to have a muscle removed from my leg, and that also had a major effect on my mental health at the same time. So I've had kind of these two issues, physical issues, running alongside and just really triggering everything, every kind of intense feeling that you can have.
So then it must make, it makes relationships more complex. What about work? Have you been able to work with endometriosis, or?
I was, and as I progressed, the added stress was making it worse and worse. And the amount of time off or working from home that I had to do, and I'm there just like, I don't know, I'm having a really bad period, I don't like, and having those sorts of conversations with employers, just really, really difficult. And the last job that I had, in that sense, like, there were other things going on that were impacting on my mental health. So I left that job and moved to the north for some breathing space. And I mean, now I've done a dog grooming qualification because dogs relax me. And dog grooming, it's a really mindful activity because you obviously have to be very present. So I do bits of that up here and a bit of volunteering, but it's just with the endometriosis and then problems with my leg, it's a normal job or a job I can't really do anymore.
So this second illness or problem, what happened when that arose, and what age were you?
I was 19, so second year of uni up in Scotland at St Andrews, and I'd come around to the idea that I thought maybe the army might be a good idea. So I joined the officer training corps. We were having a great time on like a winter camp, and then I just remember waking up in the middle of the night, and it's the pain that I have never felt before. But there was nothing to see. Like, my leg there was no swelling, there was nothing. And I mean, it took, I think, altogether 2 days, nearly 2 days of me being in like the worst pain I've ever had, to finally see a doctor who knew immediately what it was, thankfully. So I had emergency surgery, and was in hospital for a week, had another 2 surgeries and lost that muscle. And it's taken a lot of work, physically, mentally, to be where I am now. It definitely, that trauma was enough to affect my mental health in such a way that I became severely depressed. I had PTSD, and what they now see alongside it also borderline personality disorder, or, well, they've started referring to it now as emotionally unstable personality disorder. And I'm like, well, I don't know which one sounds better, to be honest. But it's one, like, even when I first heard the borderline personality, I was like, I don't have a split personality. But that's not what it is. It's just a very intense range of emotions, and having issues with trust and abandonment. And I mean, it was definitely something that really affected me, was being in that kind of pain, but I couldn't see anything wrong, and I couldn't see anything wrong. And then I had these men repeatedly telling me that there was nothing wrong. And that is something that just, then with the endometriosis as well, and being kind of told, oh, there's nothing wrong. So that, of course, is going to have like a massive effect on someone. I mean, yeah, if I just had the endometriosis alone, I would still have been massively affected by constantly being told that there's nothing really wrong with you. And it's a bit like, well, I know my body. I know there's something wrong. Like, I'm not making this up.
Yeah, it's like an invisible illness, isn't it? But at the end of the day, it's only invisible to people who are outside of your body. It's very visible to you because everyone knows when their body's not working correctly. So to be told repeatedly, no, like this, that must be absolutely destroying for your physical and for your mental health. You know, how has it affected your life having that kind of like invisible disability?
Well, yeah, it's the self-doubt, that's a major issue. You know, sometimes I'm a bit like, am I really sick? Is it really that bad? And quite often when people find out about my leg in particular, they usually, and it's just a human reaction, you know, they look up and down, and then they're like, I don't see anything wrong with you. Well, you're not going to. And especially, I don't want you to. It's, you know, they don't know that. So when they see me at the gym, they're kind of like, oh, there's nothing wrong with her. And it's, well, no, I'm going there to strengthen and condition my body. Like, if I don't work on the remaining muscles, everything's off. I mean, it helps my mental health as well, but they don't know that I, alongside that, am factoring in rest, like a lot of rest into my day. Like, I do have to sit down, lie down. It's, you know, just because you might see me walking and I don't have my walking stick, that doesn't mean that I'm all right. Or like, people just judge, and they're just a bit like, oh, you look fine. I'm like, yeah, that's because I'm hiding. Like, you just do. I mean, if I am having an endo flare and I am actually out and about, I might make more of an effort with my appearance sometimes, because I don't want people to know. It's one where I'm like, I want to talk about it, but I know people feel uncomfortable. So it's more, I'm hiding things to make other people feel comfortable. And also at the same time not to have the pity. Like, I don't really want it. It's not helpful. It's just like, do you know what, I have to deal with this day to day. Every day is different, every hour is different, and it's, you know, you get, and everybody does it, you kind of judge someone on that snapshot that you see. Like, you're not seeing the whole picture. You don't know what's going on. You don't know that I'll then go home, have to take tramadol, get like the hot water bottle out, that I'll not sleep. There are just so many things. I mean, I have like a sticker on my car and stuff that just say like, not all disabilities are visible, because people just don't realize it's, you know, I am actually disabled. And it's, you know, but they're like, but you're not that disabled. What? Is there a level that I have to be at? I'm sorry.
Do I have to look a certain way for in your head for me to you know, have that label?
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's like what you said as well. You don't necessarily want a label either. You just want to live your life like you are. And we all have to go through different things in our lives, health-wise, personally, work, all these different things. You know, like, why on earth should you have to like go through this explanation every time, you know, just because? I find it really sad when you were saying about that, like the self-doubt and having to hide away, like that just must be, you know, really hard for you at times.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, that with regards to relationships, you know, I have tried dating, but I do just find it really difficult to trust someone enough. You know, there's a lot of information to take in about me, and I don't want to hide it, but then, you know, I'll like joke with my family about, I'd have to tell them in stages. I can't overwhelm them with, like, I can't list out all the reasons not to date me, like in the beginning, which it's just like, but when do I say something? And then if I say something, are they going to freak out and just run away? Because, yeah.
It's hard, isn't it? Because you've obviously gone through this process defining, almost your life has been defined by these two illnesses, and then therefore in your head it's like they're the reasons. I find it hard to hear you say, oh, you know, that's why somebody wouldn't want to be in a relationship with me. But actually, like, you know, there are so many people out there that wouldn't care about this stuff and would totally work their way through with you or with anybody else who does have these, like, you know, health conditions. We all are going to have health conditions at some point.
Yeah.
And I think you know, trying to spin it, and you know, you've got lots of amazing qualities to bring to a relationship as well, and you know, they're things that I think maybe people who are going through the same as you and yourself, you need to remember that, you know, you're not defined by this. You know, you've got so much more to you than just that. And but I'm not undervaluing it, I'm not undermining it, because I can't imagine. I mean, new relationships are horrendous anyway. Like, oh, the thought of getting naked in front of someone new anyway is like horrendous. The thought of like having to tell them your little secrets that you've got, horrendous. Like, you know, when you've got some big things that you're going through and dealing with, that must be really hard.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, it's a very neat scar, and it's not that visible really on my leg. So, you know, I start off with that one. But then with my mental health, I have self-harmed a lot. So I have scars from that. I mean, I reclaimed some of them and got a tattoo there, which, yeah, I love that. I love looking at it. It's a good reminder. But then now with the endo on top of it, and it's hard to, it's like I feel personally attacked by my own body a lot of the time. So it's hard to look at myself in the mirror and look at my body and like it, if you know what I mean. And even like with the endo and the endo belly, that's a real thing. It's like just all of a sudden so uncomfortable, and you look a good 6 months pregnant. And it's one like, if I complain about it and my sister or someone will go, it's really not bad, I'm like, but it feels so bad. It feels massive. Like I'm constantly thinking about it because it's hurting as well. So I'm almost too aware of my body sometimes, and I'm just like, your body changes like over the years and that, but I'm just like, I don't like my body a lot of the time. And having to have conversations like that with someone new, or like if they saw those scars, or now I've got some new scars on my back from another surgery, and just having to go through all those conversations, I'm just like,
too much. Very overwhelming, I'd imagine. With the mental health disorders, like such as the depression and the borderline personality disorder that you spoke about, what kind of journey have you been on with those? Is that something that's kind of been with you the whole time, or is that something that came later?
That's the whole time, really. I mean, my parents always described me as being quite sensitive, as they would say. And then, around when my period started, things did get a bit worse. The abandonment issues, they were, and I'd be like, really, really high and energetic and on top and bubbly, or really, really low. It's quite hard to find an in between, but you just kind of put that down to being a teenager. But then soon, it was pretty soon after everything with my leg, that it just felt like everything was crashing around me. And I found it very difficult to accept what had happened, because like there wasn't really a reason for any of it. I was a bit like, I haven't done anything wrong type thing. And the depression was really severe, and the episode lasted for quite some time, with quite regular bouts of self-harming, and one where then the doctors decided it was best that I actually go and be admitted to a psych ward for a bit. So that was only a few days until my parents could pick me up, but that leaves a mark on you. And I had regular therapy. They tried CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, which helped a bit. It helped in the sense that it made me talk about what had happened, because, and even now I still don't really talk about things, but that kind of makes you confront it and go into detail, and that was to help address some of the PTSD that I was having, and that alongside medication. But then, so that I left. I had to leave that university and leave that life, and moved back to be with my parents, and started to get things back on track. Started a new degree course that was animal related instead, so began to like find some enjoyment again. I mean, something or someone that really helped was my dog. Just giving that extra purpose and that kind of that silent reassurance, like just that companion who you can trust. I'm like, I can trust you.
Unconditional love, dogs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
especially if you give them food.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was, everything was kind of stable for a bit then. But then, you know, after I'd finished that degree, I wanted to like try and do a bit of traveling and stuff. I hid that I was on medication, or even going to therapy. And when I came back from my few months away, it was very much kind of like, well, I can't tell an employer about my mental health problems. Like, they won't hire me, or they'll treat me differently. So just all of those thoughts, like, and building shame around taking the medication, around having the conditions in the first place. So then I was just trying to find different coping mechanisms, and that's when bulimia introduced itself to my life, and like really excessive exercise, like all punishing things, like everything was kind of coming back. But then I didn't want to say anything to anyone, because you're a bit like, well, I don't want to fail again. Like, I don't want everyone to think that I'm weak, or, there's just this whole stigma around taking medication. And it took for me to have another bad episode, which led to me relocating and coming up here to then start therapy again, and go back on medication, and like try and teach myself and my parents that that's not a bad thing. And medication, it's been developed for a reason, and the medication in combination with the counselling, and I tried a different therapy, DBT, which is dialectical behavior therapy. And that, with the medication, has had a really positive impact, because it does focus on your relationships. So how you interact with different people, and how, you know, just understanding and accepting that sometimes my reactions or emotions are going to be a bit intense, but learning how to manage those, and also then helping to educate and inform everyone that's in my support group, so they are a bit more understanding if, you know, I react in a way that they wouldn't.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much stigma around mental health and antidepressants and all these types of things, but they are, you know, they are things that we all experience from time to time to a certain extent. And so it's only when you've been through it, then it breaks down that stigma. And it's also about then, like you say, educating people to make sure that people, just because you've got a mental health illness doesn't mean that you should be like cast away. You know, like there's so much that can be done these days where that's not the case anymore. And it's not, I don't know, it's like self stigma as well, you know, like we could, like you said, like you didn't want to go and speak to your employer about, you know, what was going on, or you didn't want to tell your mum and dad fully, or, you know, it was hard to tell your circle of friends or boyfriends or whatever, like that. And that's inside you then, you know, and then you have to live with that. And then that leads to all these physical, you know, bulimia, excessive exercise, you know, and that's what we need to break down as a society, I believe, to make sure that people don't, you know, we don't have this stigma based around it, because we could all be there, or we may have already been there, and that's okay, you know. Mental health illnesses is exactly the same as having a physical illness. It's just,
Yeah.
it's just your brain. That's the only difference. But I suppose because of the symptoms of it, people kind of associate it with something that's really negative. But it's not. It's treatable, and it's, you know, it happens to a lot of us. It's extremely common. I think you are amazing, and honestly, hearing you talk is just like, you know, I've had a lump in my throat at points, and yeah, just hearing you talk about it all, and so candidly as well, it's like you should be just so proud of yourself for everything that you've obviously been through, and, you know, for continuing on the way that you have. It's remarkable. And kind of on that note, like, despite, you know, all of these things that have happened to you during your life, like, what are the positives that you could take away from this experience? And, you know, what advice would you give to anybody that is suffering through any of these like topics or illnesses that we've kind of discussed today?
I mean, I definitely would recommend some of the online support groups, in particular, like the endo community on Instagram. I get a lot of information and reassurance from that, and I really would just say, like, no matter how silly you might feel about how you're feeling, please find someone to talk to. Just someone, either, I mean, sometimes with me, I find it easier to be open with people that I don't really know. So if there is a new counselor or therapist, because I'm not afraid of upsetting them. Like, sometimes there are some things that you might not want to say to your support group because they'll get upset. But it's really important to have that outlet, because I know that if you keep everything inside, it finds its way out, and usually in a destructive way. And I mean, I would say, just if you are struggling, just don't give up, because like you'll have good days, bad days, awful days, but just hang on to the highs when you do get them, and try and find those little joys in life. Like I've become a lovely little old lady up here and doing my gardening and playing with the dogs. It's very peaceful. But yeah, I would just say just keep talking. And I would love it if, as a society, we could talk more and just normalize it. Like that it's not a big thing to talk about your feelings. It's because at the moment it's just a big thing, and it's like you still have this feeling of, should I be admitting to these feelings? It's, what will people say, what will people think? And you know, it's, your feelings are your feelings, and they are always valid.
I couldn't agree more. And you know, a large proportion of the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing now is to make sure that these things are normalized and that people don't feel alone, because you know, there are so many things that we think people won't understand, but then when we start to talk, we soon realize, oh, okay, that person does understand a little bit. Or like you say, you kind of find one person and then you talk, and then you go, oh, I don't really feel like I want to talk to them about that. I'm going to talk to, you know, a different person. You know, there's the Samaritans. We're very lucky in this country that we've got lots of great helplines, that, you know, crisis lines and stuff like that can help us with our mental health. And you know, in terms of endometriosis, you know, I think you have obviously managed it so well for so long without really knowing that that's what it was. So I just think you should applaud yourself for getting this far, and you know, don't ever feel like you've got to hide away, Laura, because you're an amazing person.
Thank you, lovely.
Well, thank you so much for your time, and go back into your peaceful garden with your lovely doggy and go and have a nice afternoon. And take care.
Okay, thank you
very much. Bye. Today's chosen charity is Endometriosis UK, who helps individuals take back control by providing support and vital information and a community for those affected by the disease. To visit their website to see all their amazing work that they do, please visit www.endometriosis-uk.org. Thank you so much, and remember, only people matter.